right now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 2021 General Meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm currently the president of Civic Federation. Thank you for joining us this evening. What we'd like to do at the beginning is go around the horn and have people tell us their names and where they live, and if they belong to a homeowners association or civic association to mention that. We'll start with Jackie.
I'm Jackie Boko. I'm with the Northwood Four Corners Civic Association.
Peggy Dennis.
Am I muted or unmuted?
Unmuted.
Thank you. Peggy Dennis. I live in the Fawcett Farms subdivision, but we don't have a civic association, so I'm a member of the West Montgomery County Citizens Association and past president of the Civic Federation.
Thank you, Peggy. Alan Myers.
Alan Myers, president of the Maplewood Citizens Association.
Thank you. Karen.
Karen Cordry. I'm currently recording secretary, and I am president of Kensington Heights Civic Association, which is right next to the Wheaton Mall.
Thank you. Charlotte Caulfield. That's Charlotte Caulfield. She's president of the Lyttonville Community Civic Association. She's muted. Pete Salinger.
Good evening. I live in Springfield, which is in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm on the Springfield Civic Association board.
Thank you. Elizabeth Joyce.
I live in East Silver Spring, and I'm the chair of Saratoga Neighbors.
Thank you for joining us. Llewellyn Mass, nice to see you.
Sorry, thank you. Independent, individual, whatever we call ourselves.
That's what we call ourselves. Jerry Garson.
Jerry Garson, treasurer of Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc., and a member of Regency Estate Citizens Association.
And chairman of our transportation committee. Lutris. You're listed there as Moostris.
Sorry, Nancy Abel is here. We're an infill townhouse community called Bethesda Crest. I'm representing our HOA, but we actually live in Allen's Tower of London.
Alan, I'm sorry, names were shifting around. I accidentally muted you.
That's okay. Joan? You're muted, Joan. There you go.
Joan Bierweiler. I'm president and representing Aspen Hill Community Organization.
Thank you, Joan. Rosemary. We're introducing ourselves and saying where we live. And while Rosemary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I'm Rosemary Arcoyan. I live in Goshen in the Up County.
Thank you, Rosemary. Nice to see you. Joe Awkward. And you're muted, Joe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Awkward, also along with Nancy and Alan, Vice President of Maplewood Civic Association here in Bethesda.
Sherlock, you just disappeared off of my screen.
I'm Sherlock Grigsby. I live in the Rivers Edge community, and I'm here as the Vice President of the North Potomac Citizens Association.
It's good to see you, man. Harriet Quinn.
Harriet Quinn. I live in the Four Corners community in Silver Spring.
Thank you. Carrie Lamari.
Carrie Lamari, former president of the Civic Federation. I am the president of the Norbeck Citizens Association, and I guess I'm all around good troublemaker. Thank you.
Good trouble. Paul Jaronowski.
Paul Jarasinski, president of the Cherrywood Homeowners Association in Albany, Maryland.
Sorry for mispronouncing that. Cynthia Green.
Hello, Hello, I'm Cynthia Green with the Springfield Civic Association in Bethesda.
Thank you, Cynthia. Mike English.
Hi, I'm Mike English. I live in Down Silver Spring. I am president of my condo board, but which technically is an HOA, but doesn't extend beyond the buildings and not really involved in Civic Fed. And it's here in my own personal capacity.
Thank you. Louis Willen.
Okay, hi, Louis Willen from the Cherrywood Homeowners Association in Olney. Good evening.
Bob Nelson.
Bob Nelson from Goshen.
Oh, good. Grace Burnside.
Hi, I'm Grace Burnside. I live in Wheaton, Maryland, and I'm just attending the meeting in my individual capacity. Thanks.
Thank you. Bailey Condrey.
Hey, former Civic Fed president and Parkwood Residents Association member and executive committee member.
Thank you. It's your turn, Max. Introduce yourself and say where you live. There you go, Max.
Max Bronstein, Strathmore Belpre community, a longtime member in the past, now retired, but always interested in what's going on.
Thank you, Max. Let's see, who else do we have here? Kira,
You want to remute yourself?
you want to introduce yourself, Kira?
Hi, I'm Kara Luders, and I'm president of the Parkwood Residents Association, which spans both Kensington and Bethesda.
Thank you, Kira. Jameson.
Hey, how's it going? I'm here sort of by myself, but I have been involved with the group called Responsible Growth for Montgomery County, former officer on the Aspen Hill Civic Association, and that's where I live, Aspen Hill.
Thanks, Jameson. Chris Reynolds, can you hear us? Can you talk to us?
Yes, I can hear you and talk to you. I am Chris Reynolds. I am president of Suica, the Seven Oaks Evanswood Neighborhood Association in Silver Spring. In about 3 seconds, I'm going to be president in absentia because I'm on a walk about to cross into Indian Spring over here.
Pat Tyson.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm sitting in with Charlotte Caulfield, and we're from the Littonsville Community Civic Association.
Thank you so much, Pat. It's good to see you. Joyce.
I'm Joyce Gwads, and I'm a member of the board of the Edgemore Citizens Association, just adjacent to downtown Bethesda.
And Eileen Finnegan. Eileen, tonight, she lives in Hillendale and always interested in Civic Fed activities. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's turn to our agenda because we need to make a adjustment to the agenda. Hey, Dean, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Meredith Ahmed. I'm a former past president of the Montgomery Civic Federation and currently a member of the County Redistricting Commission. And I apologize for being late, but I was at a meeting with Sandy Springs Civic Association giving a presentation about the redistricting.
Thank you, Dean. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
There's the agenda. I am going to ask for your approval, but I'd like to modify it in 2 instances. I'd like to add approval of the 2021-2022 budget as part of the treasurer's report. And then after that, the election of officers handled by our nominations committee chair. And then I'd like to have a moment of silence for one of our members who passed away a few days ago. So I move that we add those 3 items to the agenda. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Abstentions? Thank you very much. That's the approval of the agenda. Jerry, let's turn to the treasurer's report on the adoption of the budget for next year.
Well, I'm going to propose the adoption of the budget, which is on page 15 of the September 2021 Civic Federation newsletter. We're showing membership dues of $2,500. And under expenses, we're showing a post office box and postage of $130, website of $400, Federation meetings at $300. Hopefully, maybe towards the end of the year, we'll be able to have meetings in person. Offices supplies of $300, committees of $100, and memberships of $300. Insurance is $650, and miscellaneous of $10, giving us total expenditures of $2,190, and showing us possibly a net income of $310 unless we have more meetings in person. I ask for the adoption of the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you, Jerry. Next.
Now I'll give the actual treasurer's report for the period from July 1st to this morning, which we got one check in the mail this morning. Membership dues have been $419. Our expenses so far right now is only $2 of miscellaneous fees that bank charges us, giving us a net income for the period of $417.26. Our bank balance is now $9,356. If anyone has any questions, give me ask me now.
Thank you, Jerry. Back up to our agenda.
Yeah, you know, you
would
can
like
press the little top button at the top of every page. It'll take you to page 1, and then you can leap back down to the page you want to get to versus scrolling back and forth.
Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
It's your turn. You're up. How about the nominations
You
committee?
go to the nominations page. If you go to press top and go to page 1, you can link and jump right to it. Since we're looking at your screen. Page 10, yeah. Okay, so, oh, yeah, you're hearing me, right? Yeah. So we have a slate of candidates that we pulled together. And once again, Alan would be president. We'd have a new first vice president, Joshua Montgomery, who's with McKinney Hills, Carroll Knowles Civic Association. Second vice president would be Elizabeth Joyce, who's on the meeting from Saratoga Village neighbors. Karen Corgi would continue to be our secretary, and Jerry Garson, our treasurer. So I don't know if there's anybody who would like to submit a name. You can, do this right at this point if you'd like to. If you would like to stand for something, that'd be fine. We also, of course, we always need volunteers to serve on our committee. So that can be done separately. But does anybody want to stand or put another name forward for our slate of candidates? I'll take that as a no. So can I make the motion myself as the
Yes.
chair of the committee that we accept this slate of officers for the coming fiscal year? And we have a second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody. It's
thank
been
you.
an honor to serve as president of the Civic Federation. Please note that paragraph at the right. We continue to seek volunteers to serve as members of the executive committee at large and as chairs and co-chairs of our standing committees, education, environment, land use and planning, legislation, public finance, public safety, and transportation. We need all the help we can get, and we're looking forward to the immediate contribution of Joshua Montgomery and Elizabeth Joyce. So Joshua, wherever you are, and Elizabeth, congratulations.
Thank you.
Great.
The other thing I wanted to add to the agenda was just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge Justin Chappell, a really good friend of the civic community in Montgomery County. He was the president of the South Silver Spring Neighborhood Association. He was on the board of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance, and he was a board member of our Safe Silver Spring. Justin didn't wake up on Thursday morning. He was a young man. He was very involved in county civic activities. He was a great advocate for people with disabilities. He basically was my mentor when it came to understanding the challenges that people who have disabilities have when they're pedestrians in Montgomery County streets and highways. So this is a picture of Justin from one of our Safe Silver Spring meetings. He was a great guy and he'll be sorely missed. So could we just have a moment of silence remembering Justin Chappell? Thank you very much. Want to move on to the, we have a space here for announcements. Anybody have any announcements for the good of the order? Does anybody want to share with us what we need to know about what's going on in the county? Whoever was saying that, we couldn't hear that very well.
Peggy, just unmute yourself and you can speak.
Peggy, go ahead.
Going back to the nominations and committees, I believe I'm still chair of legislation, and I would dearly love the legislation to be a committee of more than one. So if any of you have particular interests in state legislation coming up during the 2002 term in Annapolis or county legislation, please gang up with me. I need help.
Okay, I'd like to say something here at this point. I was asked by one of our members of Responsible Growth to mention, well, a shameless plug, Responsible Growth for Montgomery County is a Facebook page. We're trying to, well, let's face it, we're talking about growth in Montgomery County, primarily opposing Thrive and Attainable housing. Now, Monica Dane is a new member to our group. She's a Latina, and she is handling a petition drive, hand petition drive to get signatures to basically stop the AHI and Thrive, or at least make some modifications to it. She asked me to mention she would like to have help with people in the Civic Federation to get 10, 15 signatures in each petition. Please let me know. I can send you a copy of it, a PDF copy, and you can print it out. And I'm sure she will, really appreciate it. Well, and I will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other announcements?
I would like to give an update on the redistricting. Currently, the commission is expecting to start looking at maps at the October 6th meeting. I think that's the right date, the first Wednesday in October. Those meetings are cast on Facebook. So I encourage anyone who's interested to watch the meeting and see what's being discussed, so you can make sure you get your input in.
This is Karen. I'm sorry. Could you, whoever was speaking, just give me your name so I can put it in the minutes?
Yeah, Meredith Ahmed.
Ahmed. Okay, got it. You're down to a telephone number at the moment, I think.
We're waiting now.
Oh, never mind.
For our guest speaker, Meredith Wellington from the Office of the County Executive, who's going to share the county executive's thoughts about the Thrive 2050 draft that's before the county council. She's been trying to get in. So, Jackie, see any indication?
Alan, are you going to give me a chance sometime before we adjourn? I don't care any time, but
I was going to do it after we talked about the Thrive.
Okay.
Sort of when we get to the committees and the old business.
Sure,
portion of the program.
sure.
So,
Hey, Alan, can you hear me?
yes, who is that?
Hey, this is Josh Montgomery. I'm sorry I joined late.
Well, thank you, Josh, and congratulations on being elected the first vice president of the Civic Fed.
Thank you. I'm sorry I have a family emergency while I'm down in Tennessee right now, so I'll be back up tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good. There's Omar. And let me just start with the introduction to the topic that we have tonight. I'd like it to be focused on the Thrive 2050 draft plan before the County Council. We've sent around links. Many of you have been involved in discussions about this document for many months. We've shared with you a PDF and a link to the Thrive draft from the Planning Department's website. We've shared with you a copy of the County Executive's June comments to the County Council about the Thrive draft. We've shared with you copies of the Stormwater Network's comments on the draft plan, as well as information from the Montgomery County Thrive 2050 Coalition, outlining issues that we consider to be important. We have a resolution that we'd like you to consider and vote on later in this program. If we can get Meredith on, Meredith was going to talk for 15 minutes about the county executive's perspective. We were going to do a Q&A with her, and then we were going to read the draft, have a conversation about it, and vote on that. Up until now, we have not taken a position on the Thrive document substantively. Our testimony before the Planning Board in November and the County Council in June was more about the process of community engagement and outreach on this document. And our resolution, there she is, our resolution reflects those concerns. So once we get Meredith in a little square, we'll ask her to talk to us about the county executive's position on the document. There you are, Meredith. Welcome to the September meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. We've anxiously been awaiting your presence, and we're at the point where we'd like you to talk for a few minutes about the executive's concerns about the document, answer some questions, and then later we're going to consider Federation resolution that addresses those issues. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Meredith Wellington, who can tell you what her special position is in the Office of the County Executive. And you're Meredith, you are muted.
All right.
There
Many
you go.
obstacles, but here I am. Thank you. Yes, I'm Meredith Wellington, and I'm a land use policy analyst for the county executive. And I'm also a former member of the planning board. I served on the planning board for 8 years. And so I have been the county executive's point person on Thrive Montgomery since the very beginning. Yes, the county executive's views on this are clear and well known. He sent a letter to the county council on June 10th, setting forth his concerns about Thrive Montgomery. And his concerns are numerous. He feels that community outreach has been inadequate and that the situation was very much confused by launching both this new general plan at the same time as launching the ZTAs that they said would implement the plan, called the Attainable Housing Initiative. He's very concerned because the original goal of this plan was affordable housing. And yet, when planning discovered, when it did its own economic analysis of adding this kind of housing to Silver Spring, when it discovered that the least expensive unit, a townhouse, would be $700,000. Instead of pausing to see if it could come up with a policy that also included affordable housing, they moved forward with now a new name, Attainable Housing. And I've been watching for a definition, and they've had many of them, but they have not settled on a final one. It really is. And how it'll say one thing at one time, and then it sort of contradicts itself later on. Now, affordability is key because the whole idea of this plan had been that if we build smaller houses, and it makes logical sense, then they would be less expensive. And this would allow groups that haven't been able to afford neighborhoods near transit to move in. And if you look at the plan, you'll see there's a focus on Hispanics and people of color. And of course, the county executive supports that. And in fact, that affordable housing, real affordable housing, is one of his overriding goals. And he's already done several projects as county executive. But what happened was the median incomes of these groups are around $74,000. And the house that could be afforded at that price is $300,000. And yet this new housing that they are touting is the least expensive is $700,000. And even Gwen Wright has said, yes, it's expensive. So what the county executive has proposed is a complete housing plan, a housing plan that and that is done also through the master plan, so that when a master plan comes up with the goal of affordable housing, you do micro kind of planning, which is now being done in the District of Columbia. And you look to rezoning some properties for missing middle. There are places where it is appropriate, but you also look to retaining existing affordable housing and other opportunities to include more affordable housing in the mix. And that's not being done here. There's no plan for affordable housing. It's nothing but market rate, developer driven housing. Hello? I don't know, is Thomas's iPad, does he have a question?
That's okay, go ahead.
All right, let me go ahead. So a few points about where we are right now. The county executive remains determined that this plan should be changed and that there should be more community outreach. And you all may have heard when the plan was presented to the county council, council members were open to holding more public hearings on the planning board draft. And that is something the county executive supports, but he also supports more detailed outreach of the kind that council member Jawando is also upset about the lack of outreach. Now, there is great confusion between the Attainable Housing Initiative, which is a very, very detailed plan for zoning text amendments, changes to allow very small lots. And the planning board is working on that right now. But I want to say to you all, this is important, that right now what's before the council is Thrive Montgomery. And so Thrive Montgomery is the document that needs to be changed, because Thrive Montgomery in at least 2 chapters recommends these zoning changes. And that is the predicate for those zoning text amendments. If Thrive Montgomery doesn't recommend these changes, then the ZTAs cannot go forward. So all this stuff about, well, we're not, the council's saying we're not really rezoning now. Well, no, they're not technically writing a zoning text amendment. But if this plan passes the way it's written right now, the first 2 chapters, it will then be the predicate for the zoning text amendment, which is supposed to come in. They're working on it right now. It's supposed to come in sometime in November. So the council's plan is to pass Thrive Montgomery.
You muted,
Sorry, my mistake.
you muted yourself, Meredith.
The names keep shifting. I'm sorry. No, I muted her accidentally. I'm sorry, Meredith. Please forgive me. Somebody new came on, and when I went to mute them, the name shifted and I muted you instead.
Meredith, go ahead.
But she's still muted. You'll have to unmute yourself. I'm unable to do it.
Okay.
There you go.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
You'll have to tell me what you didn't hear. So what I've said is that next Monday, the Fed committee is taking up the first two chapters, compact growth and complete communities. And you should write these pages down on page 32 and page 45. That's where the recommendations are to rezone all the single family neighborhoods in Montgomery County. And that is what would be effective to object to that and not support that and talk to council members. And I didn't even get to say, because we got started, well, the way we got started is I want to thank you very much for inviting me. And I want you to know that Mark sends all of his greetings and thanks you for all the important work you do. And he just asked, and we all ask, that you just express your true views and your concerns to the county council as often as you can. So I am open for questions. I could go into more things and we could talk about attainable housing, which I'm also following for the county executive, but I'm sure you all have your own questions.
Meredith, I've got a question. One of the things that I noted in the county executive's memorandum to the council president is that he was concerned that there are important areas of like economic development and environment that did not get sufficient consideration and priority in the draft plan. Can you talk about the feeling about including more detail about economic development in the environment?
Yes. There are no chapters now on either economic development or the environment. And there were chapters in the original public hearing draft, and those have been removed. And the county executive has asked that chapters be put back in. But he also has a different take on what economic development should be. He doesn't believe that we're going to get lots of job growth by focusing on what they call these centers of activity all over the county. He wants us to focus on our main towns, our commercial business districts, Bethesda, Silver Spring, White Flint, White Oak in its infancy. And those are the places where we have the best transportation, where we have the best infrastructure, and those are the ones where we should be putting our dollars. And as he said in the letter from June 10th, planning's own studies support this. In the White Flint study, the consultant concluded that White Flint development hadn't gone forward because there hasn't been enough job growth, not because we don't have these complete communities or the missing elements that are mentioned in the planning document. So that's economic development. For the environment, yes, there must be a chapter on the environment. There is a very detailed chapter in the last general plan of 1993, understandably so. And now we're facing real climate change. This terrible, terrible flood that we had earlier this month and the loss of a life. This is a new thing that has not happened in Montgomery County, and it's happening now. And this plan should have recommendations for redefining the floodplain, because we now get a lot more water. So the floodplains, which are areas where we're not supposed to build, have gotten bigger. And then adding more stormwater management and increasing the size of our water pipes. There's a lot of things that need to be done. I've seen videos of terrible flooding in Kensington, right near Rock Creek Park and the Rock Creek. And the plan doesn't mention any of these things, and yet those are land use issues of tremendous importance. Now I see I have gotten some questions in the chat. How can we maintain existing affordable housing? Yes, that is what's called NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing. And there are different ways to preserve it. One way is for the county to purchase it and then to make it available either through the MPDU program or through another program. Another way to do it is to not allow it to be developed in the master plan and to give the owner density to do something else somewhere else, but not where that house is, because a lot of these houses, they are a great buy, because right now they're not at $700,000 or $800,000, but they will be as soon as they're renovated by a developer. And we want to preserve that kind of housing where we can. So it would take, Chris, my answer is it takes more than, it will take intervention of some kind to preserve this naturally occurring affordable housing. This has been the whole problem with the buying up of the house and then blowing it up until it's a mega mansion. Now let's see, Karen Cordry has a question. The process is actually far more limited than the discussion suggests. Depending on the measure you use, the planning board's numbers suggest this is in the range of 35 to 150 houses a year out of a single family housing stock of 185,000 detached homes. So I guess, Karen, what you're saying is that this will all happen very slowly.
Yeah, what I looked at was, when I was trying to think about this, was there's this whole idea that this conversion to these mega mansions is coming, and if we don't just do this right now, well, it's all going to turn into mega mansions.
Right, yes.
And it just, the numbers aren't really there in the first place. I'm not sure how many people there are out there that can really actually afford $2 million homes. It's not an inexhaustible supply, I don't think. And being driven by this notion when it's really happening in a very limited number of communities too, it looks like from their own discussions.
Well, also the answer to that is not to go into this big panic. You can regulate the McMansion. They already changed the development standards for the McMansions and made the houses smaller. And now there's been a huge problem with these stormwater waivers and flooding and a lot of extra water where they've done the McMansions, and that can be regulated. So yes, I agree with you. That is not the issue that the planning board would like to suggest it is.
We've got two people raising their hands. We'll start with Jameson.
Okay.
Jameson.
Hi, mine's, well, I guess more of a comment than a question, though I guess there's a question here. I'm a lifelong Montgomery County resident. I used to play in the forests, plural, that grew up along 270 back when it was called 70S. And so I've watched this county change. And one of the things that I find really upsetting is the amount of lip service that's paid to preserving the environment. Just doing a very quick count, there's about 13 acres of forest land that the county's given up just this year alone. And it seems to me pretty crazy when you have a vision of the future for the next 30 years. It doesn't even have an environmental chapter. And I know the arguments, oh, well, we sprinkled the environment throughout the whole document. We're facing global warming and we're facing serious storms. Alan, would it be okay if I share my screen for 2 minutes? I live next to a creek and I think I want to show this is some pictures from a storm that was not a hurricane. This was last summer. If that's okay, Alan, I'll
go ahead and try.
All right, let's see.
I'm just glad I'm here.
Okay, this is Sycamore Creek in Aspen Hill. This is right about where it comes above ground from a tunnel. Much of the creek is fed by runoff from streets. This is after it had rained a little bit. This is a short while later, and this is not unusual. I mean, this was a little higher than we normally see, but I'll go back to this first picture. The stream was engineered by Montgomery County to have sort of an S curve to slow the water. The problem is that because of the sheer amount of runoff, and some of this is probably due to global, from climate change, the increase in rain that happens just suddenly, the rainwater just flooded over that little man-made peninsula. And this is not necessarily an unusual occurrence. This storm was a little extreme. It was not, I will mention, it was not a hurricane, but this is what happened to our street during that same storm. And this is what we're going to see a lot more of. And so I think it's criminally negligent of the planning board to come up with a document for the next 30 years when we're facing climate change and to not have a serious document facing the real issue of adapting to climate change and how we're going to deal with flooding, how we're going to stop the march of deforestation that has ravaged this county for the last 50 plus years. So I urge everyone to get informed about what's in there and to basically say no, they need to do better. And that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jameson.
Let's see if I can unshare my screen now.
And I've
There we
seen
go.
similar film of Kensington neighborhoods where the backyards are totally flooded, and because they're near Rock Creek and Rock Creek isn't being managed. And yes, it's just the beginning. So we need to take this on and take it on now. And there's even possibilities that there may be federal money now. And so now is the time to put out our claim and say, this is what Montgomery is going to do. And to not even have a chapter is really, it's a travesty.
Well, when you read the document, the main focus, and they try and paper over it by saying, oh, we're going to deal with the environment and make things walkable, rollable. But it's really about changing land use, and it's targeted at single family homes. And that's it. That is their sole goal. And you listen to some of the proponents of that plan, they almost come out and say it.
Yeah, that is the focus of their plan. Absolutely. It's to rezone the single family neighborhoods, to add not just diverse housing types, but also to have enough density so they can add retail and mid-block, little grocery stores or whatever, all of which sounds nice in a way, but they're not really planning for this. You don't just rezone everything and hope for the best. And so if those things are going to happen in Montgomery County, it needs to be done through the master plan process with some very detailed planning, not just rezone everything and hope something's going to happen. That's basically what we did with these CR zones. And you see that those metro centers have not developed the way that the county had hoped, because it isn't just about the zoning. It's about the planning. It's about the welcoming. It's about finishing certain infrastructure to make the place inviting. So that's what the county executive wants to do.
Let's move on to, Carrie will come to you after this. Peggy Dennis.
Yes, Meredith, you mentioned economic development in places like Silver Spring and Bethesda. Did you not mention Gaithersburg and Rockville because they're municipalities, and are municipalities not covered by Thrive 2050?
They're not. Those are municipalities that have their own zoning authority, complete zoning authority. And so that's why I did not mention them.
Thank you.
I mean, Gaithersburg is attracting all kinds of important biomed companies, and they're very important to the county, but it's not something that we plan for.
Carrie Lamari.
Hi, Meredith. How are you?
Hey, Carrie, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. And I would not want you to be accused of misinformation, because we have some visitors from the other side in the room.
Yes.
Yeah, and tomorrow we want to make sure everyone knows that we're laying it out the way it is. The fact of the matter is, with respect to affordable housing, the way it was laid out in Thrive and then followed up with a zoning text amendment, which doesn't give actually the county the opportunity to address regulations and laws to deal with stormwater and affordable housing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The way it's set up, they're going to upzone all the properties in Montgomery County. Take properties that are relatively, I'm going to say, started 350,000 last year, probably around 500,000 thousand this year houses in middle Montgomery County, in Wheaton, Glenmont, Aspen Hill. And with the upzoning, the land value alone would probably be around 650 or 700,000, which affects affordability, you see? And the way it's set up, what is left is only subsidized housing in Montgomery County. And if you take into account the displacement factor, because you're going to be displacing the people that can least afford to move to these new homes.
Karen, let me address the.
Sure, go for it. Thank you.
You were speaking there for you, and I agree with some of what you said, but I can't verify everything that you said. But what I would say in terms of the level of the rezoning is that having watched the last work session on the attainable housing, so far the planning board is recommending, yes, rezoning all the residential zones, R40, R60, R90, R200. For R200, only adding duplexes.
Right.
But for the other zones, adding triplexes by right, quadplexes if you're within a mile in a priority area, and then using the pattern books, not to have necessarily an example of what the house should look like. It's more just to set the size of the dwelling and then determine the setback so that you can have 2 or 3 different houses on one lot. So it's a very, and then all of this would be done by right. All you have to do is go get your building permit. So
right. But the point I was trying to make, Meredith, was the affordability factor.
Yes,
if you increase a property zoning 3 or 4 times, okay, the value of that land is going to go up 3 to 4 times, which can exceed.
Go up, but usually it doesn't go up until after there's been some extra development on it. But it does, that's right. It makes it more expensive and more expensive to purchase. Other questions?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me make this point. It's our hope that we're going to take up a specific housing resolution for the Civic Fed at our October meeting. So we're going to focus on housing, express our viewpoints about some of the things going on at the County Council and the Planning Board in October. In this meeting tonight, we're going to focus on this resolution that's on Thrive. So if some of the questions can be sort of Thrive specific, we would appreciate it. Let me ask one before we go to Elizabeth Joyce. And that one is, some people came away from reading the document thinking that the Ag Reserve was under threat and that there was likely a prospect for some significant development in the Ag Reserve. What's the county executive's feeling on how the Ag Reserve issue is treated in the Thrive document?
Yes, in the letter, the county executive expresses his concern about the treatment of the Ag Reserve in Thrive Montgomery. There's 2 areas of concern. One, there's this vague description of we need to have better roads and transportation to the Ag Reserve, and that also that the Ag Reserve should be used for active recreation. Well, no, that's not the point of the Ag Reserve. So there's a suggestion, and again, once something is put into the general plan, then those ideas can be added on. So if you say it could be used for active recreation, somebody can propose, let's put a little league stadium there or 6 ball fields, and we've got to expand our roads. And pretty soon you're changing the use of the land in the Ag Reserve, and the land in the Ag Reserve, the primary use is farming. So the county executive in the letter says you need to change that and go back to honoring the primary use of the Ag Reserve, which is farming, and not be suggesting, that we have to add roads and that it should be a place to deal with our field shortages. So yes, the Ag Reserve is at greater risk if this plan is passed the way it's written now.
That was a question for our friend from Goshen. Elizabeth, you go, and then Alan Myers. Elizabeth?
Okay, quickly, I just wanted to add to Jameson's comment, not only do we have these current problems, but if a great deal more of our land surface is paved over in the interest of densification, the stormwater runoff issues will be much greater, and there doesn't seem to be any plan to address that. And also another issue someone put in the chat, the use of ZTAs. It is assumed that a zoning text amendment, which is supposed to be a tweak, is the only way to deal with these problems. And that is just considered a given in all of this. The District of Columbia does not allow zoning text amendments for this kind of sweeping change, and many jurisdictions do not. And yet it is considered to be a given that that is the way to do it. As a PR professional, one of the fascinating aspects of this whole enterprise is that they have framed the issue as if this is the only way to deal with these problems, even though they, as Meredith mentioned, they dismissed the affordability issue, which was clearly defined in the January Silver Spring report, and they have given the impression that this is the only solution, even though they are ignoring the best practices recommended by the originators of missing middle housing, Daniel Perolik. And that was clear from a recent presentation by Opticos Design. They're not doing so many of the things that they consider important. For example, compatibility. We can talk about that. But all of these things are left out.
They are left out, and they're left out on purpose.
Yes, they are.
And and again, the county executive said in his letter that these things should be dealt with through the master plan process and not through one countywide zoning text amendment that has so many random elements to it. And you know, even the developers, when you listen to them in the heat group, said that they would much prefer to have 3 to 4 acres to develop affordable housing, because then they get economies of scale. And, you know, the cost to them to go in and just do one lot, what it means is that they have to have a huge profit off that one lot. And when you look at what EYA said it could do triplexes in the town of Chevy Chase, the triplex was 1,500 square feet and $858,000. And a lot of that was developer profit, because in order to take that risk, they want to make a lot of money off of it. And we don't want the money to go there. The developers need to start working with us to build affordable housing, not gouging basically young couples so that they can have a very, very small house in a good area. So in a very fine area. Any other questions?
And we've got a couple more. Alan Myers.
Well, it's not really, it's sort of a question and a statement. Meredith may remember me from many, many years ago. I'm here in Maplewood, and we're well within that 1 mile radius of the medical center and metro stop. And so this neighborhood would be greatly affected. And I've been trying to wake it up to say, hey, look, there's something coming down the road you got to look at. So I invited Councilmember Friedson to speak a meeting on the 13th. I asked them, if somebody from the county, if they have a problem, I had somebody from the county executive's office there at the same time. And they said, we don't want to debate. So I'm wondering if we did back-to-back meetings or meetings subsequently, if you or somebody else on the staff would be available to come out and come to our meeting?
I'm sure we would be able to. Yes, yes.
Okay.
What's wrong with a friendly debate?
I have no idea. It just doesn't exist in Montgomery County.
Well,
And we'd like to change that. Kim, you've got a question. And you're muted, Kim.
Hello, Meredith.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm doing good. I live in Wheaton, and gentrification is a huge concern to me and some of the residents in Wheaton. And we have a racial equity social justice department. Blacks, Latinos, and seniors are going to be impacted by Thrive.
The racial equity department did send comments about Thrive to the council. And those just went in this summer. And those comments dealt with, yes, the problems with the housing, but also that the attitude of the plan, and I'm sorry that Tiffany Ward's not here to speak about it herself, but the way things were said in the plan, it was if the plan was supposed to help these unfortunate people, as opposed to people getting just what they deserve. What is their right? Their right to live in a place with trees, their right to live. And that was one of the points that was made. But also, yes, there's a lot of concern, both by the executive and the racial equity group, about displacement. And it's a real thing, for some groups, but also for seniors and lots of different people who have a house now that is much more valuable than it was at the time that they bought it, and to put pressure on them to sell in order to get that profit, and then they're going to build something very big. But what are you hearing in your neighborhood, Kim?
We're very concerned, like I said, that, one woman spoke about being pushed out of DC. And so she's lived it. And so she's very afraid of being pushed out of Montgomery County. And it's like, where are we going to go next? We don't want to leave Montgomery County. So then we're going to be moving further up north, where we're going to have to get a car. What they're creating is urban sprawl. Right. Because now you're moving people who could afford to live in Wheaton further up county, because we're not going to PG County. We can't afford DC. And we're just going to move further up county, where we're going to be forced to get a car because the transportation up there is so unreliable. Public transportation is unreliable. Right. And in order to even get to the metro, you have to have a car. So.
Right. And that's one of the reasons the housing's less expensive, because it's not near the transit.
Exactly. And so how are you going to get to a job? It's a lot of concerns, Right. Most Blacks, and I'm not going to say Latinos, I can't speak for Latinos, but a lot of Blacks and African Americans have lived through this. We've been pushed out of every community, Capitol, New York Avenue in DC. You see it going on in Baltimore, and now it's here.
Well, one of the things that the county executive supported in his letter it's called SAP, Small Area Planning. And this was an idea that was in the district, and it was put forward in a Washington Post article by a group of people exactly for this reason, that they were concerned about displacement. And I guess that's one of the evils, I think, of just a county-wide rezoning, where there's no context and no goal. Basically, the goal is just to let the market operate, and
right.
Usually that just means everything gets way, way more expensive. So the way this works, where you're near transit, to minimize the unintended consequences, you do direct negotiation over a small area. And that's why that needs to be done through the master plan. The small area planning would be like a subset of master plan planning, and that would be done in areas where it jumps out at you, there's going to be issues about displacement or other kinds of issues. Because we are a mature county. There's hardly any area of the county, there's no green field. So everywhere you're talking about doing this, there are neighborhoods, viable, happy, healthy neighborhoods. Montgomery County has always prided itself on its neighborhoods, and messing with that balance means you've got to look at what would be a real benefit, and not just let the market operate and caveat emptor, buyer beware. So.
Thanks,
Well,
Meredith.
thank you.
A couple more questions. Jerry and then Karen. Jerry Garson.
We've seen a lot of problems with stormwater management, and all our current stormwater management plans are based on the 10-year rain. We are now getting the 100-year, 200-year, and 500-year rain multiple times a year. What are we doing in Thrive 2050 to solve this problem? During the last storm, we saw flooding close Tuckerman Lane by Cabin John Regional Park because of the inadequate size of the culvert under the road. Do most culverts in the county have to be raised, meaning raising the streets? This is a serious problem, and Thrive 2050 doesn't seem to realize that we're having the 100-year rain or 200-year rain or 500-year rain. When is this going to be fixed?
Well, this is what needs to be added to the plan, and I hope you'll write in, and everyone will write in to say we've got to deal with this serious stormwater management issues. That's part of land use. That's part of the decision making when you decide what can be built in a certain location, is dealing with the water situation. The county executive himself, we are applying for FEMA grants to see if we can enlarge and deal with the culvert situation. But from the point of view of the long-term plan, that should also be spelled out in that long-term plan as a goal for the county, because it's not, the general plan isn't a true budgeting device, but what it is it's a list of, the things that you want to accomplish that you get out in the open, and then you can plan for in terms of budgeting and in terms of land use decisions. So it's a huge omission. It's putting their heads in the sand. They have a picture in the draft. I think they kept it, they rewrote the draft, but that just shows White Flint the way it was with the big parking lot. And of course there was tremendous runoff from that. And then it shows the new White Flint with up-to-date stormwater management, but nothing new and special, nothing to deal with climate change. And that's not what is needed. What is needed is real thinking about, as I said earlier, defining the floodplains now, defining, as you say, what is the 10-year storm? What is the 100-year storm? You can't keep those old definitions because it just means you'll be unprepared for the storms that come. So that needs to be added to the plan, but we need to tell the Fed committee and we need to tell the council. Need 5 votes there to get this plan so it could really be usable.
This is an area where we joined we're a member of the Stormwater Partners.
Yes.
And they made those points in their letter to the county council, and we've associated ourselves with those remarks. Maybe this will be our last question unless somebody has a burning issue they want to discuss. Karen Cordry?
Yeah, I guess my question and thought kind of was, what does the county executive think about townhouses? Because in some respects, this whole provision seems to be a way of avoiding the fairly standard notion of just using townhouses, which actually are a substantially denser use of and more efficient use of property, it seems like, than what we had before. And I think the missing middle concept is great if you do have the green fields like you were discussing. I don't have any problem with the notion in an area where you're starting from scratch and could you build some of these things? But I just look at what they're proposing at this point and the fact that in a standard R60 kind of zone, they're saying you can build a 4,200 square foot house, and that this is supposedly going to be a house size development. There isn't a 4,200 square foot house anywhere in my community or anywhere near here. I mean, it would just dwarf everything else in the area. And, it's,
well, the county executive certainly has supported townhouses, and there are lots of townhouses built in Montgomery County. Now they're done under the optional method, usually with a minimum of 3 acres. And as I said earlier, developers like that because you get the economies of scale. The problem with putting them in the middle of the single family neighborhoods is
I don't want them in the middle.
No, the prototype is too big. The standard townhouse is too big to be put in the single family neighborhood, but along the corridors.
Well, exactly.
Absolutely. The corridors have a lot. You didn't hear me yelling as much about the corridors. The corridors have a lot more potential. Again, the county executive still would oppose the total rezoning of all the corridors in one fell swoop. But But at least the corridors offer the opportunity where you can get more land and more land where you can develop it more intensely without having this terrible impact on the single family neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's let that be the last question. Thank you, Meredith, for joining us this evening and giving us a good foundation for our subsequent discussion. I don't know if there's anything else in the chat you'd like to.
There are a lot of messages here.
I just saw that
to
Kelly asked about the what should be the priority for trees in the plan. I know it's sprinkled throughout the Thrive document, but do you have any thoughts about how?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, let's not chop down the trees we already have, because when you redevelop those single family neighborhoods with the much more intense development on a street, you can pretty much say goodbye to the trees that are there. So tree preservation within the single family neighborhoods. And then the county needs to do more. That's not just an MNC PPC problem, to get more trees, to preserve more trees. And this is something that the county executive has been looking at he's a very strong supporter of forest preservation, but his views aren't always shared by the rest of the county. So let's see, I hear a lot about economic development in the down county and east county, but nothing in the up county. Well, we went over that in the sense that Gaithersburg is its own entity, has its own zoning control, and it has a lot of economic development. Germantown and Clarksburg. Well, Clarksburg has had transportation issues and right now is a mecca for homes. Germantown has a lot of potential for economic development, but the times have not been as good. I mean, when I was on the planning board a long time ago, we would approve new development from early in the morning until late at night. It's hard to believe that, but if you ever look at the planning board's schedule now, they leave at 2:30. And so Germantown is something that the county's been very interested in, and that's why it did that whole center there, that town center. But it hasn't taken off yet. Complete zoning rewrite rather than doing this by ZTA. Well, the whole code was rewritten in 2014 and a lot of changes were made. I think the answer is not to redo the whole code, it's to do this through master plans. And I'd be glad, I hope you all have my email, meredith.wellington@montgomerycountymd.gov, and feel free to email me or call me, and Alan knows where to reach me. So thank you all very, very much. And please express your views to the county council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meredith.
Bye, everybody.
You're welcome to be here and hear our conversation if you'd like, but if you need to leave, that's fine too. So thank you so much.
I think I do need to leave, but I hope you'll send me whatever final resolution you all agree to. Thank you.
Thank
We
you
put
very
the
much.
email address in the chat.
I'll put that in there in a moment.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Let's see if I can get you guys back. Okay, everybody, I'd like to move to our consideration of the resolution on Thrive 2050 that we drafted and put in the newsletter. I think we should read it first and have a conversation about it, then take a vote. Then we can move on to some other business. I want to reiterate that we're going to have a serious conversation focused on on housing policy at the October meeting. If anybody wants to help draft that resolution and prepare the foundation for that discussion, I welcome your participation. Elizabeth, we have you now, so I'm counting on you to make a major contribution to that effort. Let me put on the screen the resolution. Picture of Justin again. And this is the resolution on my Google Docs. And I would prefer not to read it. Karen, do you want to read it? If you unmute yourself. Because we got
Okay, I guess I can read it. Okay.
we got your name at the bottom of it, so you might want to read it. Can you read it?
All right, fine.
Can I make it
I
bigger?
never remember what I do anymore these days.
Can I make
so
it
who knows?
bigger? There we go.
There we go. Resolution of the Montgomery County Civic Federation on Thrive 2050 draft plan. Whereas the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc. has taken a strong interest in the development of the new draft long-range planning document for Montgomery County, Thrive 2050, the draft plan, currently before the Montgomery County Council for its consideration. And whereas members of the Civic Federation have expressed repeated concern about the inadequate public outreach and engagement process of both the Montgomery County Planning Board and the Montgomery County Council regarding the draft plan during a period of the coronavirus pandemic in the United States. And whereas the Civic Federation has worked closely with policy colleagues such as the Thrive 2050 Neighborhood Coalition and the Stormwater Partners Network on issues related to planning and land use and environmental sustainability and resiliency. And whereas the Civic Federation concurs broadly with the recommendations developed by the Neighborhood Coalition and the Stormwater Partners Network in their communications with the Montgomery County Council. And whereas the Civic Federation takes note of the important concerns raised by the Montgomery County Executive in his June 10th, 2021 memorandum to the Montgomery County Council President concerning serious omissions in the draft plan and recommendations to improve the planning document, and concurs broadly with his concerns about the draft plan. And whereas the Civic Federation believes that critical issues of economic development, environmental sustainability, housing production and affordability, adequate public facilities and infrastructure, and community ownership are of the utmost importance to the development of the dynamic, inclusive, productive community that we wish to support, and merit much more discussion and elaboration in the draft plan. And whereas the Civic Federation notes with concern widespread confusion among Montgomery County residents about the simultaneous government discussions surrounding the draft plan, multiple proposed countywide zoning text amendments, and the planning board's work on attainable housing policy. Therefore, be it resolved that the Montgomery County Civic Federation expresses its view that the Thrive 2050 draft plan needs very significant modification in many areas before it is approved by the Montgomery County Council. And further, that the Montgomery County Civic Federation calls upon the Montgomery County Council to work diligently to add new substantive standalone chapters on job-creating economic development, environmental sustainability, and infrastructure development and financing to the draft plan. And further expresses its view that there must be significant improvement in the approach of the Planning Board and the County Council to community engagement and discussion on this important document, and further calls upon the Montgomery County Council to withdraw zoning text amendments with changes in countywide zoning related to the draft plan. Proposed to be adopted on this 13th day of September 2021.
Thank you very much, Karen. So I move the adoption of the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
We're open for discussion. Who has comments on the resolution?
Can I talk?
Absolutely.
Okay. Where is that? Put that resolution back on the screen. The last 5 words on it, it's kind of tricky, and here's why. It sounds as though you want to, calls upon Montgomery County Council to withdraw zoning text amendments with changes in countywide zoning related to the draft plan, right? The planning board is already disassociating the ZTAs from Thrive Montgomery. So I'm going to ask you to remove related to the draft plan. Put the period after the zoning. I think it meets the intent.
I consider that a friendly amendment. Anybody have a problem with that?
Thank you.
Any more discussion about this? I have a couple things that I'd like to throw out there for your consideration. Here's another page. That's not it. Proposed additions. This would be in the second part, after therefore be it resolved. I propose that we add language that says Civic Fed calls upon the County Council to hold 2 additional public hearings on the draft Thrive 2050 document currently before the county council with additional time for public testimony, and calls upon Montgomery County civic associations and homeowner associations to increase their outreach to their members about the long-range planning document and its related issues. Obviously, we had concerns that we've expressed many times about the limited participation before the planning board and before the county council. Lots of people were not able to get on the list and testimony. Even those of us who are representing organizations, Meredith Wellington for the county executive, Casey Anderson for the planning board only had 2 minutes, which was the exact same time that normal, regular residents had to for their testimony, and typically organizations had longer time. So I think we should call upon the county council to have more public hearings with additional time for public testimony. And the second piece here is that we also need to call upon our member associations to do more to educate the public about Thrive 2050.
So moved.
So I consider that a friendly amendment since I wrote it.
Yeah. Actually, Alan, could I suggest to hold at least 2 additional public hearings?
Yes. My suggestion, except.
And when you say with additional time, do you want us, I mean, those would be time for public testimony. I'm not quite sure what the additional time is. That to say you want 2 additional long public hearings, or that there should be adequate time for public testimony or something like that, or something?
Adequate.
What about using the normal times that you mentioned, Alan, that we normally get for civic associations?
Yes.
You're right. Yep, I agree with that.
From normal time for public testimony?
Yeah.
So you should get 3 minutes.
Right, 2 minutes is just not enough. I mean.
3
you don't
minutes
have
is
to-
even short.
Alan?
Yeah.
I don't think there should be any limit on the number of speakers at the county council on this plan. And when they did the plan in 1964, there were 8 county council public hearings. So
you're saying get rid of the 2 and just say additional public hearings?
As needed.
yeah, I think they should have enough public hearings that everybody who wants to speak should be able to speak.
So that would be public hearings as needed?
Yes.
Well, at least 2 public hearings.
No, don't say at least. They'll hold that to the minimum and say we only agreed to do 2 more.
If you say as
Sufficient
as
public hearing-
needed,
additional public hearings sufficient for all interested persons to be able to participate under the normal guidelines, time guidelines for such testimony.
All right, back
Agreed.
that up. Sufficient for what?
Sufficient to allow all interested persons to participate pursuant to the normal time guidelines normally applicable to such public hearings.
And I would just note that in the District of Columbia, when they did an amendment to their comprehensive plan recently, it wasn't even a rewrite like this is. Their hearings went on into 3 o'clock in the morning, and no one was denied the right to speak. So it's very telling that people were not allowed to speak at the county. They started out with only 1 public hearing, then they hesitated and added a second one, and then they wouldn't add any more. That's just wrong. I also wanted to add on the second thing there. I think the planning department should be reaching out to the civic associations. When you look in their appendix, they met with a total of 4. And, coming to the Civic Federation doesn't cover it. They have a list of hundreds of civic and homeowners associations on their website, and they did no outreach at all. In fact, when we asked them to do that repeatedly, they said they can get a meeting in a box. We'll send them a meeting in a box and they can hold their own meeting. So I'd love to know how many meetings in a box they had. So I would just, in addition to the associations reaching out to their members, the planning board needs to do that. That's what they were supposed to be doing.
We invited Gwen Wright to come to our meeting in Maplewood. I never got a response back from her. I just discussed this with her over the summer, and I said I'd be in touch with her in August. I was, and not even a response back. And I think Nancy Ablis has had the same lack of response from Gwen.
Right. And
even
so,
answer your email.
and then on top of that, they want to rezone everything without, through a ZTA process, not the master plan process. And so, they don't want any input. And every neighborhood is different. So that's why it's important to have the feedback process.
How about calls
And
on the
I heard a
planning
lot
board?
of comments like what Alan just said from a lot of other associations.
So this is, what about this second thing that I've written now? Harriet calls upon the planning board to very substantially increase its outreach to all county community organizations, especially neighborhood association, homeowners association. I'm thinking not only regarding Thrive, but everything else they do. I don't know. I mean, Thrive 50/50 may be sort of a, dead to them now that it's with the county council.
Right.
So what would we do to just add to this clause here?
Make the council do it. I mean, if the planning board doesn't want to hold meetings, the council should. I mean, we have an entire network called Nextdoor. The council has full utility of it. It's about time they used it.
Okay, I was just thinking if we're going to say something besides the.
I would say, instead of saying especially, I would say including.
And rather than say very significantly increase, why don't we say meaningfully increase, or is that too soft a word?
I like it.
Because they haven't done shit so far. Use my French.
So everybody cool with this? Anybody want to tweak this? Anybody want to add something else?
I would say at the end to affirmatively provide detailed information on the Thrive 2050 proposals.
Where's that? What?
Well, instead of just regarding Thrive 2050, at that point to say to affirmatively provide detailed information on the Thrive 2050 proposals.
Right here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do we want it on Thrive 2050 and go a little bit further and actions to implement same? Which pulls in a little bit the attainable housing.
It's really important because the process is going on simultaneously,
Right.
whereas the Thrive should have been passed and then consider the ZTAs instead of doing them together. It is a ridiculously confused process and deliberately so.
Okay, so and related proposals about Thrive 2050 and related implementation proposals.
I like that.
Where?
I'm going to warn you guys. If you join the ZTAs and the general plan together, they're just going to say we're confused again. Keep it as separate as you possibly can. We're not confused. Look, the engagement is on responsible growth for Montgomery County, the county council official engagement. They built the plan on 500 comments, okay, and 246 online participants. That's it. That was nothing. They didn't, and then they talk about the community participation. That was nothing more than performance art. They had already drafted the plan. They weren't interested in our opinion. They were just giving us a presentation of what they've created. And what we are saying now, go back and really build a general plan on the public input. Forget about the ZTA. Do that next month.
Okay.
Okay, this is where we are right now with the suggestions that we've talked about, adding to the draft that was in the newsletter, adding these 3 clauses, calling on the county council to hold additional public hearings sufficient to allow all persons interested to participate with the normal time limit for public testimony, and calling upon the planning board and county council to meaningfully
significantly
increase its outreach to all county community organizations, including neighborhood association, homeowners associations, to affirmatively provide detailed information about Thrive 2050 and its implementation, calling upon Montgomery County Civic associations and homeowner associations to increase their outreach to their members about the long-range planning document and its related issues. And
I just, instead of about the long range plan, just go back to calling it Thrive 2050, because nobody understands that you mean the same thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then what about this last one? Do we need this last one now? This thing about calling on the county council to, we edited it.
You could say, and its related issues will be discussed at another meeting. That's all.
No, I'm talking about this thing that you put about the zoning text amendments and changes.
That's what I'm
I
talking
guess I'd
about.
take it out. For one thing, there's only one zoning text amendment that's actually been filed anyway, right?
There's only one text amendment. You're right.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the other ones are still sort of floating around out there in the
But
ozone.
AHI is being developed. It is going to be a zoning text amendment. It is a related issue, a related ZTA. Take issue out. Its related ZTAs will be addressed in upcoming meetings of the Civic Fed. Leave it at that.
How about if we keep it as to withdraw zoning text amendments that make changes to countywide zoning? Because they just passed this 5G horror without any downside consequences.
You're right, but it should be done at a later meeting because they're going to say, just like Casey always says, you're confused. I mean, we spent 4 hours testifying before the planning board, at the last public hearing. And at the end, after listening to all of us, he says, "Oh, y'all are just confused. He and Gwen Wright were saying, you're confusing this AHI with the Thrive Montgomery. You don't know what you're talking about."
Are you saying that their outreach and communication were insufficient?
That's insulting to the community.
So
That's
what do we say? What do we call it?
Alan, I'm concerned that the phrasing as it is now in the last line, it's calling on a withdrawal of, well, okay. If you use the word withdraw, are you addressing then only the ones that have actually been submitted? Are you deliberately not going to address the ones that are floating in the ether? If that's your intention, then I'm fine with this.
No, that's not my intention. My intention looks like it doesn't fit right now.
Right.
Alan, are we asking them to defer consideration of any zoning text amendments?
Based on this conversation, what people have said, we don't want to see this done by zoning text amendment.
Right.
We want to see it done by the master plan process. So I would save this issue of zoning text amendments and master planning into our October resolution, and I would take this out.
I agree, because
I agree.
it needs a lot more to be said about it than what you could say in one sentence or so.
Right, and it is confusing.
That's a great point.
And then we're left with this. Anybody else have anything they'd like to? I can scroll up to
Is there going to be time to come up with another resolution and get it to the council in time for when they are starting to discuss how they're implementing this? I mean, I know they're not going to approve Thrive until whatever, November.
Yes. Considering how long it took me to write this, I think we can get another one in time.
I still caution you, it's related issues. Those 3 words, they can make a lot out of it. Stick to Thrive 2050, period. Further discussion on related issues will be discussed later.
But Carrie, we were talking about stormwater. That's a related issue. These things are.
Yeah,
There,
actually, I think we should
really broad.
mention stormwater specifically.
okay, well, if you want to do
I
that, that's
don't
fine.
think it should be unenumerated.
including,
Well, if you're going to do stormwater, how about
Stormwater
stormwater,
management.
economic development, and what was the other one that was left out? There was a third one. I can't remember. right now.
Environment.
Environment.
But you've already said above that
Okay.
that you're calling on the county to do those things. Or maybe just say about the issues discussed above, or the problems, concerns discussed above.
Well, no,
or something.
I think
Because you've already said all those
certification was-
things. You've already said all
And
those
equity,
things.
that's it. Equity, good man. All right.
stormwater management, economic development,
And
equity.
equity.
And just give me one more.
Stormwater management
And
slash,
impact of COVID-19 on transportation.
stormwater management slash environmental issues, comma,
Yes.
economic development and equity.
And equity.
I mean, you just said all those things 3 paragraphs above
Environmental
there, so I'm
issues.
not
I know,
quite
but
sure that you need to
that's-
say them all again.
Yeah, yeah.
Not asking, but the
Environmental related issues, comma, economic development, comma, and equity.
But we already said that before.
But the
Yes.
first of the last
Why don't we
paragraph is upon the
cross-reference?
associations, not the county.
Okay.
No, but you don't have to tell you just tell them to call on the people to discuss the same issues you've discussed above there. Just, I mean, you've got 5 or
Yes,
6 or
they've
8
already-
paragraphs of things that are concerns that you. They
They already read the rest of the
and the
resolution.
issues
They
discussed.
know what's involved.
I think it's, if we take this out, I think it's fine. We highlight those issues at the top. I mean, we could just,
Yes, and it's related issues. They're all in there.
No,
But I'm sorry, was stormwater mentioned in the top?
yes.
And the related issues discussed above. That puts it all of it back to all
Because
that
here's-
page and a half of
There you go.
concerns you had.
This is the paragraph here, economic development, sustainability, housing, public facilities, and community ownership.
But there's no
I
stormwater
don't see
management.
stormwater management.
Equity. Put equity in there.
Environmental sustainability includes stormwater.
Community ownership, equity. Right. Thank you.
But you gotta put stormwater management in there.
Well,
I think it should be named.
well, you do? Okay,
Stormwater management should be named.
because we have it up here. All right, so I don't care. Yeah, all right. Uh,
Yes. Land use and environmental sustainability and resiliency. We worked with Stormwater Partners Network. They're all about stormwater.
But we should mention stormwater management because that's the most critical issue facing the county in the next 30 years.
Well, it's
Very
one of the, I think it's not the most important, but it is important. How about, all right, so this is where we are right now. It's 9:07. What do we
To
think about
approve.
this? Anybody want to add more? I think it's a pretty good product for us.
Motion to approve.
I second the motion to approve.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this draft resolution as amended by the membership. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? Those opposed? Hearing no objection, any abstentions?
Yes, Suica abstains.
All right, so Weeka abstains.
This will be sent to each,
This will be what?
this will be sent to each individual council member.
Oh, yeah, we'll send it broadly. I'm glad Bailey and Elizabeth both have expertise in public relations, so we're going to draw on their skills to get this out as broadly as possible.
And a copy to the county executive
Oh,
and to Meredith.
yes.
I'd like to publish it on responsible growth if you don't mind.
No, you can, absolutely. The
Could you
resolution,
send me a copy of this in Word?
yes, the resolution is
Thank you.
approved. Okay,
I'll
Just-
publish it in the Parkwood newsletter.
just to remind you, we're going to take up a detailed discussion of housing and another resolution in our October meeting. So that's a good thing. So let's see. What else is on our agenda? I'm still screen sharing, so Here's the newsletter. Here's the newsletter. Let's put off the committee reports for the second, and Alan had an issue he wanted to raise for the membership.
Those of us who have the residential permit parking, for the past 2 years since they changed the contractor, it has been a total disaster. And all we get from the Department of Transportation, oh, it's going to get better, it's going to get, we're working on this, I understand your problem. But all I keep hearing is from residents who can't get in because their passwords don't work, they can't change the passwords, they can't renew their permits, they think they paid, they haven't paid, and the payment hasn't gone through. I was hopeful that this organization would come up with something to beyond. They get tired of hearing from me. I don't know how many other civic associations are contacting them, but I thought something on a broader scale that might shake them up to actually look at this contract. I can't imagine how much money they're wasting on this contractor because the system sure isn't working.
Are you talking about the permitting process system?
The residential permit part, Carrie.
I worked for 2 years with Ike Leggett, and that's how we automated our system. Today, unless it's a commercial application, you can apply for any permit online, pay for it online, and you should get your permit immediately.
That's not the issue. This is the residential permit parking. You do get your permit immediately, digitally, once it's done. It's now a digital system and not the paper that we used to have, where everybody got their permits by where they lived at one time, and we did both the visitor permits and the residential house, the individual car permits, all at the same time. Now you go on their website and you put in all your information, sign your life away, give them all your private information, the proof that you live there, and then they're supposed to give you a permit, and it's just not functioning. The contractor is incapable of doing his job.
As I spent 2 years with Ike Leggett developing the online automated system. I was the catalyst for that. Now, if it's not working, I mean, you should be able to get your dog license for your dog online. If it's not working, this is the purview of the county executive. Alan, if we can write a letter to Mark Elrich expressing the concern that there are potential, glitches in the online application system, and then have Alan specifically point out where to look at. I think we can resolve that. That's not a big issue.
Carrie, I
It's a
should point out.
separate private contractor who does this. It's not the county. It's a separate independent.
I'm a private contractor.
That they do only the residential parking permits. Unfortunately, I'm the one in our neighborhood who gets the questions on them. So
it's obvious there's a glitch.
Carrie, let me clarify a little bit. Back in April, when we had the county executive here, I think it was the April meeting, he recommended I contact Dale Tibbetts in his office. I did. I never heard from him. I've been copying him on all the complaints now that I get. So when I go back to the individual, and I forwarded it to Scott Reinman, who's the person in DOT who's responsible for the permit parking system, and I've copied Dale on this. So I would think, I agree with you that if we go to the executive, it should go to Dale Tibbetts, because he's the one that's supposed to be the point person.
I have problems getting in touch with Dale and Mark.
So let's do this. Let's make a big deal about it. Alan, let's work together.
Okay.
Write something. Yeah.
Give me some of those comments. We'll send it to Chris Conklin, the head of DOT. We'll send it to the county executive.
And tell them that the online process, the online automation process of our permitting process is falling short on the parking permit process, and ask for immediate resolution to it. It shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Well, the resolution is to get another contractor, because this one just can't hack it.
No, that might be a little harder to do because it's a contract, but let's see what we can do. We'll spend some time on that and report back at the next
okay. Thank you, Al.
meeting. Anybody have any, before we go to committee reports? And
well, shamelessly, again, I'm going to plug responsible growth for Montgomery County. I would personally consider it a favor, and I'd be grateful if each and every one of you would join the responsible growth for Montgomery County. Get your family members to sign our petition. You sign our petition. If you go to that site on Facebook, It's available. You click it, it'll bring you to a change.org site. Please just sign the petition. We're just trying to get, signatures. Thank you.
Okay, so we would have saved that for the discussion, land use and planning, but let's quickly go through our committee topics. And let me again reiterate how important it is to get some help for these committees, which are very insufficiently staffed right now. So we do need chairs and co-chairs for education, environment, land use and planning, legislation, transportation, public finance and public safety legislation, if I said that. We need some help, and I'm counting on Joshua and Elizabeth to help do some outreach on that. Just go through these topics. Anybody have anything interesting to say about education as a county topic?
I think we should reach out to the PTA community. I know we have one member of Responsible Growth, Lisa Klein. You may want to contact her. I know that she's very active in the PTAs, and she might be of some help to you.
Okay, thanks. Lisa?
Lisa Klein.
Okay, we'll come back to you for that. Anybody want to share any information about the environment? I just make the observation that we do have extreme weather. The amount of stormwater flooding that we have in East Silver Spring is pretty considerable. It doesn't look as if our infrastructure is up to the task. That's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to fix. And I don't think there's been a really good conversation about how we're going to finance this.
On that topic, we pulled up the fact sheet for lot-to-lot runoff. Our stormwater management today doesn't deal with quantity; it deals with quality. There's no legal authority stormwater management has with respect to flooding. What we need to have is tree canopy legislation that addresses urban and suburban infill population areas. The tree canopy, it protects against CO2 emissions, which has a relationship with health effects. It helps with absorption of water. There's numerous techniques that we can use for stormwater, even in infill development, such as impervious driveways. We don't need to build them, especially in urban and infill developments. We can use, I forgot what's a cobblestone on top of gravel bed. That makes for a large infiltration area. Not to mention, today we only address the 1-year storm, and that's for quality. We should be looking at a larger infiltration system dealing with the 5, 10, and 20-year storm, in my opinion.
So we'll be spending more time on stormwater, working with stormwater partners. They have a website. Those of you interested in the issue, go to Stormwater Partners Network and sign up as individuals or as representatives of your organizations.
So a couple of additional comments on the environment.
Okay.
Extended producer responsibility, which is where you get consumer product companies and the manufacturers of packaging materials to pay a fee, which goes to fund broad regional recovery facilities for various products coming out of the municipal solid waste stream. Those have been passed in Maine. There's another state which escapes me. They've been proposed in other states. We tried to get an extended producer responsibility bill passed in the Maryland General Assembly for synthetic turf alone, which is it's just such an incredible toxic product. It's never been regulated at all. It's not even regulated as a children's product. So now it's being dumped around the nation and around the world. So extended producer responsibility needs to be a reality in Maryland. So we could all get on the bandwagon to fight for that. And I had another one, but it's escaping me. So throw it out there if it comes back.
Yeah, the question of artificial turf has been of concern to the Civic Fed for many years, and we recently recognized a Safe Healthy Playing Fields as one of our regular awardees. Peggy reminds me that one of the bills that we were interested in last year and we'll take up this year is the bottle deposit bill that was before the Maryland General Assembly. So we'll be focusing on that as one of our legislative issues. So after the environment, alphabetically.
Peggy wants to tell you something.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I talked with Delegate Sarah Love yesterday about the bottle deposit bill. She has been told by the chairman of the committee that it has to go through, that there is no way they will take it up this coming year. So we're not going to spend any time on that bill. It's a good bill, but we're going to have to wait and be patient. There are some other bills that I'm working with my state delegates with. One of them is a ridiculous piece of legislation that requires residents of assisted living facilities, if they have any kind of a medical emergency, the facility must call the EMTs and they must be taken to a hospital. This, in essence, means that residents of assisted living facilities are not permitted to die in their own beds, in their own rooms. We all agree, at least Ariana Kelly and I certainly agree, that this is irrational and it needs to be corrected. So that's one thing that I'm going to be working on. If other people in the Civic Federation feel passionately that elderly residents in assisted living facilities should be allowed to die in their own beds, then get on board with me. Another thing I'm trying to bring up, and it's an environmental bill, because our bird populations are decreasing by the year, I'd like to see a requirement that all domestic cats must be licensed, tagged, and kept indoors. That would be a great boon to the bird population.
Okay, Peggy, we'll see how that works out.
May I say one more thing?
Well, let's go through the rest of these things, Carrie, all right?
No, it's on the environment.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, if we're not going to deal with the incinerator, we're 10 steps behind. We either got to get rid of the incinerator or we've got to restructure it. I know there's several universities right now that are using incinerator generators. I think that's what they're called. And essentially what it does is it converts plastics and trash to other kinds of fuel, whether it's gas, what do you call that? A natural gas or diesel fuel or synthesized gasoline, petroleum. The bottom line is we need to either get rid of the incinerator or we need to upgrade it to be able to address some of our pollutants.
All right, so
That's a county issue.
You probably forgot the county executive remarks on the incinerator and Adam Ortiz's remarks of the incinerator.
I forgot. Just nobody's done anything.
So they have a contract, and it's hard to get out of that contract. So I think it's a priority for the county executive, and we can do some more research and see if a letter is going to help. But I know that it would be closed if they could close it. As for the bottle deposit bill, I don't think we need to sort of step aside and wait for it to come around. I think we can still advocate for it, and I would like to advocate for it. For those of us who spend a lot of time in watersheds, cleaning them up, plastic bottles are in the watershed, and we really don't need to wait 2 or 3 years for the General Assembly to come around to taking up that issue. So,
okay, I'll just add on to Carrie shortly. A great second generation use for the incinerator, because it's an energy producing industrial site, would be a place to take plastics to break them back to liquids.
Yeah, I don't know that
they can do it in an environmentally sensitive manner.
It's an old facility. It could cost tens of millions of dollars to rehab. So I don't know that that's it, or that the people in Dickerson would like that. So,
but those jobs would be in Montgomery County.
We'll have a chance to talk about those issues and many more environmental issues. Anything else on legislation? We've sort of merged.
I have one on environment.
What's that?
I have an item on environment.
Okay.
I just took a walk yesterday with my wife through Cabin John Regional Park. There are a large number of trees that are down, blocking the streams, which is causing the flooding. And we should ask the county to clear any trees that could actually wind up blocking culverts and causing more flooding. I don't think anyone in the county is aware of that.
No, I mean, I have to say in defense of Montgomery Parks, they're very good about clearing the trails and getting the trees.
Well, I would disagree with you totally.
Yeah, right.
I reported one large tree about 3 feet long a couple of weeks ago to the parks, to the Maryland National Capital Parks, planning parks. And when we took our walk yesterday, there are now actually 3 trees blocking the trail that we walked on.
It's a conversation that we can have.
But the trees should be cleared out of the culverts, because this is
Jerry.
what's causing flooding.
Okay, Jerry. Point taken. Anybody want to say anything about public safety? Or I guess land use and planning. Anybody else want to add to land use and planning discussion? We're going to take up housing in October. Anybody else want to say anything about land use and planning?
Sorry, Alan, I missed one on education. I didn't get myself unmuted fast enough. The president of Woodside Forest, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, has a petition going around looking for signatories to endorse more options for outdoor lunch, particularly at elementary schools for kids who can't get vaccinated. There's been a bit of a lack of support, both from a little bit of lack of support from the school district, but also just from principal to principal. Planning has varied a lot. And so hopefully that's something people can look out for and maybe hop on board with. Thanks. That's all I got.
Thanks. Yeah, I remember I've seen that letter. It's a Tom Hucker proposal that I guess that guy's name is Dan from Woodside Forest. Yeah. Nice beard, by the way, there, Chris.
Thanks.
Hopefully under legislation, one of the things that this group has been interested in is sort of reestablishing a People's Council in Montgomery County, sort of an advocate for the public on land use and land use issues. And I think we should push for that. Harry, you're still on? She reminds me how important it is, and they just took it out of the budget, and we should demand that they put it back in. Anybody want to say about public safety?
Well, I'll speak about the People's Council. I mean, I was president when we adopted that. I was instrumental in getting it done. The first time around with Ike Leggett, it was his idea. Yeah, we need it. We need a good People's Council that's going to address the interests of the public. And it should not be taken out of the budget. It wasn't that big. Actually, it was underfunded at the time. We should have 2 People's Councils with staff. I mean, Marty Klauber only had a secretary, I believe.
Well, I think it's something we should push for. It makes a lot of sense because as I was talking to Meredith earlier before this meeting, residents have to step up and they have a lot of these conversations and do a lot of the research on issues that should be facilitated by county employees. It shouldn't all be on us to do the heavy lifting. We count on our electeds and the bureaucracy, and they've let us down in many respects. So stay tuned for that. Transportation, Jerry?
Well, I had a major report in this week's and this issue of the newsletter, but I'd like to say that traffic has gotten worse compared with before the pandemic. The total 24-hour counts are slightly below. They're in the upper 90s, but basically we're getting more hours of congestion. What we have lost is the congestion between 5 and 6 a.m., but we are actually getting more hours of congestion due to COVID-19 transportation patterns.
Thank you for that reminder. We'll be spending a lot of time on transportation issues.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
Thrive Montgomery recommends no new roads or no road upgrades. The fact of the matter is that we've got over 60 years of transportation proposals that have been in the queue. Some of them have been in the CIP for many decades. They keep getting pushed off. I know a lot of people it doesn't matter. Whatever project you support, if it's in the CIP, it really should have its day. It should have its opportunity to come to fruition. And that is something that we should at least bring up, maybe as a separate matter on Thrive, because you just can't, I mean, this is the advent of the electric car, you know? Transportation is going to change in the near future, but I don't think roads are going to be obsolete. We're going to need roads for buses, for electric vehicles, for automated vehicles, whatever.
Bicycles.
There you go. But in any event, I think we should send a letter just explaining that it's rather foolish to just do away with road upgrades and then the missing links that never get built. I mean, M83, believe it or not, Clarksburg was promised a lot more infrastructure than they got. M83 was just one. They're pretty much isolated up there. I mean, there was envisioned to have, what is it, over 2 million square feet of commercial development in Germantown and then in Clarksburg. Without transportation, none of that's going to come to fruition. And
So
we can't
they're
keep relying on Silver Spring and White Oak to do the job here in Montgomery County. That's all I'm saying.
They're pushing BRT for Clarksburg, but we won't see that for a long time either. So, and we'll never see M83, not in our lifetimes, as far as I can tell. I want to, and I guess last thing, I guess maybe transportation is the last thing alphabetically. Yeah, so that's what we have. So I'd ask everybody who was on this call who's not a member of the Civic Fed, you can join as an individual. It's not expensive. If you belong to a civic association or homeowners association that's not a member, please join us. We'll be much stronger, much more effective if we have 100 or 200 dues paying members that really take us much more seriously. We have a Facebook page. Please feel free to post things to that, informing the community. We will start up a YouTube channel, which is specifically for the Civic Fed, so we can share these videos right now. They're shared on my page. Our executive committee has talked about doing some special events using Zoom because we don't have to stay confined to the second Monday. We could do things on Tuesdays and Thursdays on special topics of interest like stormwater or best practices for community organizations or for school boundaries or just about anything else since we're not traveling. We anticipate that we're going to be virtual for a while. There's a lot of concern in the community about the Delta variant and breakthrough infections. So until we get an all clear or more clear from the county government and the CDC, we'll probably be meeting this way, which saves us a lot of money in gas, and we get some more participation. So does anybody have anything else good for the order that they'd like to share? Omar, you're muted.
Yeah, as far as joining, I think is your website might be down right now, or is that where you would sign up?
Yeah, sadly, the website is down. We have a problem with our domain name, and we're working hard to get that fixed as quickly as possible because that's the way people are supposed to pay their dues. You can always send a check to Jerry Garson at the post office box, but yeah, we're going to fix that as quickly as possible. Then we'll send out a note to everybody and tell them that it's up and running and look forward for their PayPal payments.
Okay.
Omar,
can I just put my email in the chat, and I guess once it's up, you can just email me.
I know where you are.
I know you know where I am.
By the way, Omar, who's joining us this evening, is a very successful restaurant owner in Wheaton. Los Chorros, is that the name?
Los Chorros, yeah.
Los Chorros, and we go there a lot. And he's been very active in the community. We're so glad to see him this evening. And I guess I could mention parenthetically that he is a candidate for County Council in District 4. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the order?
I was just going to say, he helped us celebrate many of our Costco victories at Los Churros, so.
I was there for one of those for sure.
Yes, I was definitely happy for that.
We're happy to. So if there's nothing else, it's 9:30. We can close this early. Anybody have anything else?
Donna, did you want a report from the Utilities Committee?
Absolutely. Report from the Utilities Committee, and you might, yeah, please.
Which is basically me. All right, so on the WSSC, they came out with a recent report just about 3 weeks ago saying that they still have meter reading delays. In Montgomery County, they're 6.1 days behind. Not sure how it can be 6.1, but anyway, we'll say 6 days behind where they should be, which isn't too bad, not as bad as it had been. Prince George's County, 3.7 days behind where it should be. And they're saying, well, that's contributing, the longer billing periods resulting in higher bills and an increase in phone calls. And then another point in the report is that that as of August 24th, only 53% of the WSSC employees were fully vaccinated. 56% had at least one dose. Actually, here, in case anybody actually wants to read it there, I put the link to the report. It's not that long of a report. It's basically like PowerPoint type slides, not that many of them, so it's easy to read. So I put a link to it in the chat. And so WSSC, has its problems as usual. And then Washington Gas, I've never seen this before. And all sorts of social media sites, people were complaining. I saw this myself. People were complaining that they just flat out could not get through to anybody at Washington Gas, like even to get their gas service turned on, turned off, blah blah blah. Billing issues, anything. They literally were reporting that they were waiting like 2 hours on hold, and just flat out could not get through to anybody. And this sounded, this was almost unbelievable, but there's so many people reporting it that I believed it. And then sure enough, just, I think it was today, I got an email that went to, I don't know, I guess like a zillion Washington Gas customers saying, we're really sorry that you haven't been able to get through to us. And yeah, some things are messed up, and there was the usual blather with kind of beating around the bush kind of stuff, but basically it came down to we don't have enough employees to answer the phone, so we're going to try to hire more, probably at slave wages. And anyway, but for a few people, I don't like to be too difficult, but for a few people on some of the social media sites, I went ahead and just posted the associate counsel direct phone number and email address. That's John Dodge. And I've called him directly before. He's actually very nice, very helpful. But I didn't post it everywhere because he'd be getting probably 300 calls a day or something from frustrated Washington Gas customers. But anyway, if you know of anybody who's really frustrated with Washington Gas, then you can find John Dodge's direct phone number and email address just on the Public Service Commission website, and just in any of the Washington, or in a lot of the Washington Gas filings. In fact, that's just a good way to, if you ever need to reach a high-level person, or particularly an attorney, general counsel at a utility, look in the filings on the Public Service Commission website, and you'll find letters on their stationery, and you can just get their phone number. And I found that the general counsel of utilities is actually the people have universally been very nice and very responsive. I think it may be because lawyers sort of aren't allowed to just ignore things. I don't know how true that really is, but it's probably not a good idea for a lawyer to just ignore something when somebody calls. So that's a good way to get things done. So that's my report.
Thanks, Louis. I wanted to just circle back. Since we've still got 30 people on this call, has anybody experienced in their neighborhoods an upsurge in cars with no mufflers, loud mufflers, speeding through the neighborhoods? We had a pretty serious problem down here in East County, around Four Corners. Chris Reynolds, racing down Sligo Creek Parkway, Dale Drive, It's an issue that the county police department and the electeds can't seem to get their arms around. And I think it has to do with messaging from the county council about limiting interactions between the police and people of color in cars. And people think they're not stopping them because the county council doesn't want them to stop them. In any case, the situation seems like it's getting worse, getting better. So we're going to try to facilitate a conversation between the electeds and the police, so they will do some more enforcement. So,
But I think that's been a large problem with motorcycles, especially on the ICC, Maryland 200. And I've been in several meetings about that with like state police and Maryland toll authority people. And I think they're being honest that they're saying that, these guys, they don't have license plates, or the license plates are like flipped up or flipped down or something, so they can't be seen. So these guys are literally going like 100 miles per hour. They have a policy where they do not pursue, where they generally do not pursue, vehicles because of the, extreme danger. If all they're doing is just violating a traffic rule, like it's one thing if they're escaping from a bank robbery or something like that, that's different. But if they're just in violation of a traffic rule, they don't pursue them. And occasionally, there was one that just a few months ago lost control and got killed on the ICC. So, they just kind of let the problem handle itself.
yeah, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Over this weekend, what's today, Monday, yesterday, we did a community event. There's a Montgomery County public school teacher named Carol Pisiokta, and she's got an ice cream truck called the Icy Dream. And she comes in your neighborhood and she serves shaved ice and ice cream. It's a really good community event. You can find her on Facebook or Instagram. I think she's going to go through the end of October. But, please share any best practices you have in your neighborhood for engaging neighbors and, reaching out to your friends and family. So that's it for tonight. Anybody entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No objections to that. Good night, everybody. The Ravens are winning 14-7, so you can catch up with that. Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.